The virtuously named No Child Left Behind Act, the seventh reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, was the law governing K-12 education policy in the US between January 2002 and December 2015. Today, it is broadly regarded as a failure on many levels, although at the time of its conception, it was widely championed with bipartisan support. Its primary aim was to help struggling schools through federal funding and thereby close the achievement gap between poor and minority students and their more advantaged peers. How? Increased accountability of schools to improve the adequate yearly progress of its students by requiring that each year's grades on standardized tests must be higher than the previous year's. Schools were given an annual report card from the state on how they were performing and were required to share this information publicly. Those in favour of the Act claimed that this increased accountability helped schools and teachers realise the importance of the education system and their role in it. Critics saw this as a way of unfairly punishing schools in need of help, since failing to meet AYP targets year after year resulted in a series of penalties, including reduced funding, requirements that schools provide free tutoring, restructuring of the school staff, and even closure of the school. In cases where a school was deemed to be failing, or in the case of school closures, parents were given the right to transfer their children to neighbouring schools who were not always equipped to take on larger student numbers. Critics say that these punitive measures did little to actually help those who needed it. Schools were required to show growth in achievement only in three main areas: reading, writing and math, which may account for what some say has been an ensuing neglect of other subjects. Statistics show that since 2007, 71% of schools have reduced instruction time in subjects such as history, arts, language and music to provide more time and resources to mathematics and English, though of course other economic factors are likely to have contributed to this. Standardized tests themselves remain a point of contention among critics. Even though standardized tests may be seen as a very practical and clear-cut form of evaluating and measuring progress, it often leads to many teachers teaching to the test and not necessarily providing learners with an in-depth understanding of the overall curriculum. Many educators feel strongly opposed to standardized testing as the only form of assessment, since its results may not truly reflect a learner's aptitude, particularly in the case of students with special needs, whose learning goals many experts feel should be individualized. Teachers also felt that the anxiety of the students about the tests inhibited their performance. No Child Left Behind did not make any provisions for alternative forms of assessment, namely performance-based testing in the form of projects, portfolios, and other extended performance tasks, widely advocated by teachers in spite of the complexities involved with their development, administering, and grading. Even so, putting aside the debate on effective and accurate testing, there is evidence to suggest some success of No Child Left Behind's mission. Some local governments, including New York State, have supported at least parts of the legislation because local standards had previously failed to provide adequate oversight over special education, and No Child Left Behind would allow them to more effectively monitor adequate yearly progress. States all over the USA have shown improvements in their progress as an apparent result of NCLB. For example, Wisconsin ranks first of all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, with 98% of its schools achieving No Child Left Behind standards. NAEP results released in 2005 showed a lot of seemingly encouraging data, including all-time high reading and math scores for Black and Hispanic 9-year-olds, and the gaps between achievement in reading and math between white and black and between white and Hispanic 9-year-olds at an all-time low. Some remain skeptical as to whether these improvements were as a direct result of NCLB, however, particularly considering that the law didn't actually take effect until 2003. By the end of 2015, especially since there had been no congressional update or reauthorization on the legislation, the demand for change prevailed. No Child Left Behind's replacement, the Every Child Succeeds Act, or ESSA, was signed by President Obama and was regarded by many educators as the greatest Christmas gift they could have wished for. While ESSA does not differ dramatically from NCLB in its ideology, to improve the overall achievement levels of students, with particular regard to subgroups of the population, such as racial and ethnic minorities, children from low-income families, and those with learning difficulties, ESSA proposes what appears to be a more forgiving and empathetic approach to helping schools improve, mainly by loosening Washington's grip and empowering states and local districts with more flexibility and autonomy over decisions affecting how student progress is measured and how best to target struggling schools. How this fares over the coming years, especially considering the emergence of Donald Trump into power, remains to be seen.